On the way from Tbilisi to Tel Aviv, as soon as we pass the village of Ujjarma, we will see a fortress on a hill. It might not look impressive from a car window. However, if we stop and walk up a small path, we will suddenly appear in a historical place and find ourselves in the old capital of Georgia. This is Ujjarma, the capital city of Vakhtang Gorgasali. One of the first crosses on the territory of Georgia was erected in this city, which meant a lot in the Christianization of the country. A trade route of international importance passed through this place. Ujjarma was built by many generations, but of course, it remains a creation of Vakhtang Gorgasali. He made it a glorious and invincible city. It was the capital of Georgia. From here, Vakhtang Gorgasali ruled the entire kingdom of Georgia. He died here from the wounds received while defending the same city. Ujjarma was advanced and was made the capital due to its geographical location. Two important highways intersected here. One of them led from the north to the south along a narrow passage cut by the Iori River between the Gombori and Ialno ridges. This road connected the Aragvi Gorge and Ersto Tianeti with Gari Kakheti, Outer Kakheti, and represented an important economic artery for the country. The main highway connecting Dariali and Hornabuji from the west to the east also passed through Ujjarma. Without the winter pastures of Gari Kakheti, sheep breeding could not develop in this region, and so sheep and cattle were brought to the plains from the mountains through Ujjarma. This road went along the Iori River and led to the city from the north. All caravans coming from Dariali to Kartli to Kakheti had to pass through Ujjarma. In addition, the Iori River itself was a very important transportation artery, and following it, Ersto Tianeti was connected to Gari Kakheti. These crossroads granted Ujjarma a very important economic function. Whoever held the key to the Ujjarma gate controlled both the mountain and the plains. Also, this person was in charge of international trade flows. Along with all the other advantages, the Ujjarma surroundings were favorable for viticulture and agriculture. It was rich in game and fish, and all the advantages were present for a large and strong city to be built here. However, the major trade route remained the most important factor for Ujjarma's becoming a city. During the reign of King Mirian, Ujjarma was a princely city, and it was equal in importance to Meskheta. Saint Nino paid special attention to Ujjarma. It is not accidental that one of the first three crosses erected in Georgia was in Meskheta, the second on Mount Khoti, and the third on the very spot where this church is built. The body of the deceased Vakhtang Gorgasali rested in this church before his funeral in Svetitsko Valley. In the concept of Vakhtang Gorgasali, which envisioned the development and improvement of the Dariali-Hornabuji highway, Ujjarma occupied a central place. The city was located in the middle of the route on the border of Kartli and Kakheti. It could control all directions. Vakhtang Gorgasali began a big construction project and strengthened the already well-protected Ujjarma. In the middle of the city, there was the main castle. It was surrounded by fortress towers and thick walls. This place was the king's residence. In addition, Vakhtang built a wall around the settlement of artisans outside the fortress. He also built the Porchoma and Verena Fortresses, which protected Ujjarma from the north and east. If we consider the location of the fortresses around Ujjarma, we will see that there was a complex defense system around the city. Reaching the main citadel was almost impossible for the enemy. The Ujjarma fortress city directly overlooked the Gombori fortress on the one side and the Porchoma fortress on the other side. These three grand fortresses formed the defensive triangle that completely controlled the direction of Gare Khaketi, the direction of the Gombori Pass, and the direction of Erzotianeti. In ancient times, information was transmitted by smoke signals. We will conduct an experiment, wondering whether we can see smoke coming out of the fortresses. One of my friends is at the Gombori Fortress right now, and the other one is at the Porchoma Fortress. I will contact them over the radio and ask if they can see our sign. Are you ready, Porchoma? Yes, we are ready. Are you ready, Gombori? Yes, we are ready. I will release the smoke in a few seconds. Porchoma, do you see the smoke? I see it perfectly well. Gombori, do you see the smoke? Yes, we do. This is how information was transmitted back then. The three fortresses communicated using a signaling system. In the Middle Ages, it was a practice accepted all over the world. Near the fortress town of Ujjarma, on the left bank of the Iori River, where the Katsureti Monastery is situated, there was an ancient pagan shrine. When Saint Nino entered Georgia, she chose this place to baptize and convert pagan nobles and people to Christianity. In Vakhtang Gorgasali's times, Katsureti was the area around the fortress city of Ujjarma and a fortified place. The construction of this temple is also associated with the name of Vakhtang Gorgasali. The Katsureti Trinity Church is a lonely building in the vicinity of Khashmi, in the bosom of nature. Today, the tranquility of the monastery is disrupted by the occasional passerby, but from the 5th century onwards, it had been an episcopal center and a crowded place. The central road from Ujjarma to the Gombori Pass went by here. Some scientists suggest that the rabbit near Ujjarma, constructed by Vakhtang Gorgasali, must have been built on this field. The fact is that this field is full of poppies is witness to great historical events. In all likelihood, it is not accidental that the locals call the area around Katsureti a former town. After Vakhtang Gorgasali, Ujjarma retained its importance for several more centuries, but then time passed. First, it became a local defense fortress, and then it was completely emptied. The former dwelling of the kings was covered with forest. Of course, the city endured many invasions and demolitions. However, this was not the main reason for the evacuation. The empty Ujjarma is a visible example of the consequences of falling out of the global economic chain. Ujjarma became a city due to the large trade route. However, when for various reasons, the central route changed direction and bypassed it, the caravan route of international importance remained only a function of the freight trail, and the city was emptied. Ujjarma and other settlements on the Kakheti Ridge, who were left behind the main road, lost their economic function and were replaced by other cities. We bid farewell to Ujjarma and head to the Gombori Pass. Before we move on, we need to mention an interesting piece of information provided by old Georgian historical sources. Vakhtang Gorgasali, after a military raid in India, brought treasures on several hundred donkeys and horses and buried them in the woods not far from Ujjarma, near two towers. However, neither a map was drawn nor any other hint was left. It was ensured that no one could find it. This treasure is still buried somewhere in this area. Discovering it will be great news for researchers of ancient culture and history, and, obviously, the finder will also be rewarded. Towards the north, Ujjarma directly overlooks Porchoma, up to 5 or 6 kilometers away. This grand fortress town is situated on the right bank of the Iori River on a high mountain and overlooks the whole of Erzo, Ujjarma, and the Gombori Pass. There is an opinion among Georgian historical scientists that the name Porchoma comes from the old Georgian word pochori, which means collecting taxes. This name once again underlines one of the purposes of this fortress: to ensure the payment of fees. Avoidance of customs duties was punished very severely, and I do not think that the leader of a caravan passing by such a grand forest would have a desire to avoid taxes and commit fraud. Due to its strategic location, the Porchoma Fortress was functional until the end of the 18th century. King Irekli carried out substantial construction here, brought cannons, and set up a defensive outpost against the Lezgins. The Porchoma Fortress has been strengthened for centuries by the beautiful church of St. George in Porchoma, which is distinguished by its original architecture. Traditionally, church buildings have 4 walls, while Porchoma is hexagonal. The Church of Porchoma was considered an example of sophistication and subtlety. There even was a popular expression, as beautiful as the Church of St. George in Porchoma. It rarely happens that spring water flows at the top of a mountain. The Porchoma Fortress, along with its unique strategic location, also had the good fortune of having an abundant supply of water. In ancient times, the fortress was fortified not only with walls. Fortresses were strong primarily due to the water supply, and so Porchoma was also strong for this reason. O God, give us the power of water. Vakhtang Gorgasali carried out great fortifications here and turned this place into one of his strongholds. Porchoma controlled the road connecting Erzotianeti, Gare Kaketi, and the Alazani Valley. It also protected Ujjarma from where Vakhtang Gorgasali ruled the country, where the ruins are now covered with nettles. Once, there were royal palaces where life was blooming and state affairs were discussed. Venison was probably being grilled in this fireplace, and the people sitting around it were discussing the fate of the country. But as it often happens, the road changed its direction, and the whole place turned into a museum exhibit. We walk along the old historical road from Ujjarma to the Verena Fortress and see with our own eyes how much attention was paid to the protection of this highway. There is a total of 10 to 12 kilometers from Ujjarma to Verena. In the middle of this road, near the village of Gombori, there was another large fortress protecting the safety of this road. When you move past the village of Gombori and towards the pass, you will see a pyramid-shaped mountain on your right. On this mountain, there is a large and impressive fortress overlooking Ujjarma and Porchoma from above. Here, you have Tbilisi and Rustavi in the palm of your hand. This is the Varena Fortress. It guarded the pass connecting the Iori and Alazani valleys and guarded the central highway stretching from Dariali to Hornabuji. The Verena Fortress was built when Vakhtang Gorgasali was building cities and fortresses along the highway connecting Dariali and Hornabuji. Large, square chunks of stone are used in the wall formation. The construction technique is typical for the period when Ujjarma was built. Today, the castle can easily be climbed by anyone who is not lazy, and if you decide to climb it, in addition to stepping into history, you will see a huge space and an amazing, beautiful view from the battlements of this castle. The fortress, with its strategic location, size, and magnificent views, is suitable for kings. Everything indicates that not only Vakhtang Gorgasali, but the other kings also had their residences here. The Verena Fortress overlooks Ujjarma, Porchoma, the Iori Gorge, and Kartli. It is protected from all sides by nature and climate. It is definitely a suitable place for a king's summer residence. So, it is possible that other kings besides Vakhtang Gorgasali often visited this place. The inn owners were informed in advance of the caravan traffic schedule. They knew the size of the caravans, the quantity of stocks that would be needed to replenish, and so on. The customs officers had information about the type and quality of the cargo, according to which they determined the amount of taxes. The garrisons patrolled the roads so that the pirates could not dare go out on the roads. Only a well-maintained infrastructure could ensure revenue. Three great strongholds, Ujjarma, Porchoma, and Varena, closed on all sides the strategic space in the middle of the country, which was a well-protected golden triangle and the capital of the state where the king's palace was. This triangle was bordered by Kakheti from the east, Kartli from the west, Ertotianeti from the north, and Gare Kakheti from the south. Here, the roads connecting all four sides intersected, and shepherds, caravans, and army troops all traveled here. Vakhtang Gorgasali chose Ujjarma as his main residence because it was convenient to control and manage the whole state from this place. Numerous forest-covered churches and settlements indicate that the Golden Triangle was once a fairly crowded and densely populated area. Where there is now a forest and shrubs, fields were formerly planted, and gardens were cultivated. In addition, there were cultural and educational centers in the Golden Triangle. A clear example of this is the rock-cut complex of Koptavi, not far from the fortress town of Ujjarma, 2 to 3 kilometers from the village of Paldo. If you look northwest to the Ujjarma Fortress, you will see a mountainous ridge between the Ialno Range and the Iori River. Koptavi caves were cut into these mountains. The Koptavi Complex was discovered, explored, and brought back to national memory by a scientific expedition organized in 1957 by the Institute of History. Members of the expedition were writers, historians, philologists, architects, and mountaineers. The expedition was led by the famous Georgian writer and public figure Levand Gotua. The members of the expedition published materials where they wrote about their work. Based on these records, we wanted to see Koptavi, and we also explored the access road. But the deciduous forest prevented us from filming in the summer. In late fall, when the forest lost its foliage, we tried our luck again. The road to Koptavi was exactly as described in 1957. Nothing has changed. In the 1957 record of the leader of the expedition, writer Levand Gotua, we read, "We are walking on the forest slope. We were crossing ravines and chasms made by many flash floods and torrents. Near the foot of the rock, we reached the Koptavi Shrine, sheltered in a dense forest. The antiquity of the church is clearly visible on its collapsed and lowered chamber, with large and shady trees rising from the roof and tilted from each side. It seems as if this abandoned ancient human dwelling place is enclosed by nature in its immortal bosom, shrouded in its graceful green and protected from complete destruction. We found the church hidden in the forest and the trees still growing on the roof. The name of the church is not known. However, it is a very pretty and original three-nave basilica built of rough boulders, almost square in shape. A wide, expansive place around the church, covered with forest, naturally would have been a village in the past. Above the village of Paldo, 2 mountain ridges descended from the Ialno Ridge to the Iori River and form a natural pocket in the middle, bordered by ridges on 3 sides, which is now covered with forest. Where the forest is today, there was once a village. 200 to 300 meters from the church, there is a plateau 60 to 70 meters high. In the middle of this plateau, caves have been cut in a length of several hundred meters. The sun, wind, and rain have crumbled the soft sandstone over the centuries. The front of the complex is cut into a rock. Most of the caves have turned to dust and vanished. However, the artifacts found by the expedition reveal the importance of this complex. The caves had various functions such as housing, storage, and for keeping water and wine. Workshops and places for books were also created. A hall-type church was cut out on the edge of the plateau. The expedition members discovered 12th and 14th century manuscripts in the caves, including a fragment of a hitherto unknown literary work. They found many carved molds for icon frames, very tastefully executed, and other artifacts. In other words, there was a book storage in the complex and workshops where icons were made, which means that the Koptavi Complex was an important cultural intellectual center of the Golden Triangle. The head of the expedition, Levan Gotua, recounts the discovery of the manuscripts as follows. The fireside encourages both dozing and talking. So when I was dozing in a sleeping bag, young people were sitting around the fire and dreaming out loud. I listened to their dreams before I fell asleep. We might even find a manuscript, Guram dreamed out loud. He was the youngest among us, and I think the most capable. His dream definitely had a solid foundation. Those who built fortresses like Ujjarma cut such caves, buried such kvevris, or clay pitchers, at every threshold, and could not fail to preserve their spiritual riches. We believe in the future because we love the past. We see and look for the lost pages of the history of Georgia, written in blood and etched with a pickaxe on this cliff. With this, the tour of the Golden Triangle is complete and we make our way back to Hornabuji. If the caravan was moving fast, it would take about 10 days from Dariali to the Verena Castle. From Verena, the main highway proceeded to Kakheti through the Gombari Ridge. In the next episode, our TV caravan will follow this route.